Welcome to Middle Grade Book Adventures, where every month at the Kingston Library, we share a new middle grade book that we think you might enjoy. This month we're going to be looking at Witchlings by Claribel Ortega, in which three witchlings must do the impossible or risk ending up becoming toads forever. Chapter 1. Anything but a spare. It was the night of the Black Moon ceremony, and the very last thing Seven Salazar wanted was to be a spare witch. Now that she was 12, she'd be placed in her coven, but like every ceremony before, tonight, 3 witches would be left over, spares. Nobody ever wanted to be a spare. Seven had done everything she could think of, studied for her CAT exams, attended every witching social event she could fit on her calendar. She'd even joined the Toad racing team and gotten stuck with the slowest, crankiest Toad of the lot. At least his name, Edgar Allan Toad, sort of made up for it, but only sort of. It wasn't like Seven had to do all of those things either. Everyone in her year got to participate in the Black Moon ceremony, of course, but it was a long-standing belief among witchlings that the harder you studied and worked, the more likely you were to get into one of the cool covens. Seven tied her combat boots and slipped on her oversized purple hoodie before securing her pointy hat on her curly hair with some pins. They'd given her a giant black ceremonial robe when she got to the town square, but it was thin and the night was cold. She didn't want to freeze her buns off. She shot a quick text to her best friend Poppy, telling her how excited she was for tonight. "Duh," Poppy wrote back, "and me too. Can't wait to be coven sisters." Seven smiled at the message as she walked into the kitchen with her mother. Fox was putting the celebration cake in the fridge to cool. "Sev, you've got your amulet, right?" Fox wiped her slender fingers on her apron and let down her curly red hair. "It's only the whole point of tonight, Mom," Seven said, holding up the amulet that hung around her neck. Later that night, it would light up with the same color as the other witches in her coven. Please, please let it turn purple. The color of House Hyacinthia. The coven Seven and Poppy had dreamed of being placed into, for just about all of their lives. "Remember, things will work out okay no matter what happens tonight," Fox said. "Easy for you to say," grumbled Seven, looking at the bright aquarium pendant that hung from the necklace Fox always wore. The blue stone signified House of Stars, one of the most popular covens. Seven would have a much better chance of achieving her biggest dream, becoming a witchling world-famous journalist, if she was in one of the powerful covens like her mom. It was pretty much the opposite of being a spare, because being a spare meant your destiny and magic didn't match up with anyone else's. Being a spare meant you didn't belong, and Seven wanted desperately to belong. As Fox moved around the kitchen, the moonlight hit her pendant and seemed to adorn everything around her with shimmering stars. Seven used to wonder if her mother had gotten her name because of her red hair, which she always thought looked lovely with her deep brown skin and freckled face. Seven looked more like her dad, tawny brown skin and dark curls, but now she knew it was more likely that her mother had been named Fox because of how cunning she was. In their world, the 12 towns, a child's name was a prophecy, passed down from a grandmother or the town grand, their leader. Seven had no idea what her name meant, not yet anyway. But like any name given in Ravenskill, one day its meaning would be discovered. It was just a matter of time. Seven began tapping drum beats on the closest object, trying to match the beat of her fluttering heart. "You're still nervous about being a spare?" Seven's father, Tails, asked, strolling into the room. He was carrying her baby brother, who everyone affectionately called Beefy because of both of his roundness and his unusual strength. He was also unusually tall for his age, already 3 toadstools long. When Seven had only been 2 when she was a baby, Beefy pulled on his father's ear and Tails cringed. The baby's grip could be quite painful. Seven rubbed her scalp, war flashbacks of Beefy pulling on her curly hair, coming back to her. "I'm not just nervous, Dad. I'm freaking out. What if I didn't do enough? And what if the magic gets fudged somehow? Or Seven dropped her voice to an ominous whisper. I get placed with Valley. Valley Pepperhorn was the literal worst. Valley had been bullying Seven for as long as she could remember, putting weird things in her rucksack, hiding Edgar Allan Toad before a race, or giving dirty looks to Seven and Poppy. She was mean, scary, and came from one of the families on the hill. They were the wealthiest witches in town and thought they ran everything. Well, they sort of did run everything, actually. The only witches they wouldn't go up against were the town gran and uncle. The chances of that happening are not high, but even if it does, any witch can be a friend if you just give them a chance, her mother said. Seven held back a snort. Seven was almost positive Valley was a cuckoo, or, at the very least, part gremlin. Her parents didn't see the way Valley snapped at their professors and didn't seem to care about her schoolwork or how she was always on her own doing sneaky, probably terrible things. Sometimes, when Seven thought about it, when she thought what her life would be like without Poppy and without her family, she felt almost sad for Valley, who had no friends and the scariest parents ever. But then Valley would do another awful thing and Seven wouldn't feel so bad for her anymore. None of it would matter after tonight anyway, Seven reminded herself, because once she and Poppy were placed in House Hyacinth, she wouldn't have to deal with Valley ever again. Whether Seven ends up in the same coven as Valley or not, one thing is clear. She is going to have to do the impossible and work together with whatever witchlings she is paired up with. If you want to find out what happens, you can check out Witchlings at the Kingston Library. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next middle grade book adventure.